And welcome to another Pro Audio Suite. Thanks to TriBooth, the golden handcuffs can be released as you travel with your TriBooth. And don't forget the code TRIPAP 200 to get $200 off your TriBooth. Today we're going to be talking about, well, a few tips that we've learned over the years.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
To the Pro Audio Suite.
These guys are professional, they're motivated.
With Tex the VO stars, George Whittam, founder of Source Elements, Robert Marshall, international audio engineer, Darren Robbo Roberts, and Global Voice, Andrew Peters. Thanks to TriBooth, Austrian Audio, making passion heard, Source Elements, George the Tech Whittam, and Robbo and AP's international demos. To find out more about us, check the ProAudioSuite.com.
Line up, ladies!
Here we go.
Probably should kick this off because I made a discovery this week, because I had a session. It was actually late last week, come to think of it, but it was a session I was doing with in the morning, and in the afternoon, as I just shut down the studio, I got an email saying, "Oh, can you redo this line?" And I thought, well, I can't be bothered firing it up again. So what I'll do is I'll use my laptop through the SSL2 out of the booth, because I've got a mic in there that goes through there straight to the laptop. So
Yeah.
I'm firing everything up. And I'd actually set it up with the 4K button switched in. So I sent
And which
it off
mic is this again?
the OC18.
OC18. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I sent the file off, and then I got the reply of the email saying, "Have you changed your settings or something?" And because if you have, I like it better. Can you continue using whatever you're using now? So
Okay.
what I'd realized, there were two things at play here. One was I've been playing around with the 41.6 and the OC818, because the OC818 was going through the Neve, the 1073, and the 41.6 was going through the Grace. And I just changed them around just for an experiment and forgot to change them back. So he was getting the 41.6 through the Neve, so it was a bit more MIDI, full,
Yeah.
creamy, chocolatey, whatever.
Right.
But I changed them back the next day, and I said, I'll send you two files. I'll send you what you like today, and I'll send you what you historically liked before. We've gone back to using the 41.6 with the Grace. But having said that, the OC18 through the SSL2 with the 4K button pressed in sounds remarkably like a 41.6 through the Grace.
Of course.
So
They stand in for each other
Extra
now.
high-end boost.
it's
Yeah.
bizarre. But the thing is,
shelf.
I was kind of thinking, okay, so I see the stuff on these threads on Facebook all the time. Should I get this mic? Should I get that mic? What should I do here? Which one should I get? And it's always like, get the the 41.6 and a TLM 103. My tip is get an OC18 and an SSL2, and then you've got both. You've got a large diaphragm without the 4K button pressed in, and then you've got this hyper sort of 41.6 sound with the 4K button.
Oh, it's
4K
hard to
button
beat.
is-
Yeah, it's hard to beat the versatility with that setup. And it's not hard to beat it, but it's hard to do it that simply.
Yeah.
You know, to have a single push button that essentially changes mics.
Yeah,
like
and
I
then, just
and then
press
with
that
the
button in. There it is.
and then with
the
the pattern switch on the OC18, you have those proximity effect changes.
but,
You know,
I
you
mean,
can
this-
change. You know, you're
You could
you're good
probably
to
get
go.
into hypercardioid, and it'd be pretty.
Yeah, but this is it.
41.6-ish.
This is the OC18 with the 4K button pressed in, and you can hear like it's really, really cutting. It does sound like well, to me, it sounds.
I
close
gotta
to-
say, I mean-
I'll bet one of the
Yeah.
problems is you get too much into the OC18 because it doesn't have the long tube. So really, it's like you want to be here, but if you get away from the OC18 with the same distance that you would be from the 41.6, and you put it in hypercardioid and pop in that 4K extra, like mid-range, high-end,
Yeah.
and you'll be getting to that cut through anything sound.
Yeah.
I think we are so accustomed to not a flat sounding mic, right? Like the sound of voiceover is not a flat mic, because we moved
No.
away from a flat mic when we left ribbon mics. You know?
Yeah,
It's
true.
the same with our food. Everyone wants like overly salted food.
Yeah,
If
or
you had,
well,
like,
or
it's
spicy.
Yeah.
Dave's
Spice
hot
it up,
chicken.
baby.
But yeah,
Hot chicken
really
this, hot
boring.
chicken that. You guys get the hot chicken trend in Australia?
Oh,
It's
we
freaking-
get everything. Yeah,
No.
hot.
the big trend I reckon here, well, probably everywhere around the world, is air fryers at the moment. If you're talking food, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
The air fryer.
I got one.
I
I
don't
found
want
one
my
in the
air
garbage.
fried. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So that's your kind of. I mean, that's a pretty nice secret weapon. Now, I'm wondering what you would get out of the CC8 if you did the same exact experiment
That could be interesting. I shall
for
try
travel.
that one.
If you wanted to have a travel solution.
Yeah,
that's
but I've got
more-
the CC8 with
The CC8 was
Michael
sounding a
Braid's
lot
great.
like your OC818 when it was in the porta booth, wasn't it?
It was in the porta booth and
In the-
also in the porta booth and the car.
In the car was
And it
the
sounded
one.
a lot like
Yeah.
the OC818,
Yeah.
which is like crazy.
Yeah,
Like-
it's very cool. I like
You
it.
should
It's
change
so
your name
weird
from
how,
Mr.
like-
Big Balls to Mr. Rig, I reckon.
Okay,
Mr. Rig.
Mr.
Well, that's,
Yeah, no, that was-
is that your tip?
That's my tip.
I
Use the
I
play
reckon
button
that
with
should have
that.
been your tip. That car one, that still gets
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
And I did send that file off to a guy called Chris Gates, who is a bit of a fan of the show, is an audio engineer here in Melbourne. And he,
I love the guy, but he's always
couldn't
cutting
believe
you off.
Gatesy. Oh, very good. See,
Is there a Chris Expander out there?
Yeah.
There's
Shut the
no
gate, the
Chris
horse
Expander.
is bolted. Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Okay, you win.
Come on, Robert. Give us a Source
Oh,
Connect
shit,
tip.
I was hoping you wouldn't gonna call me.
Give us a Source
Tip?
Connect one. Yeah.
Yeah, just avoid airports. There's your tip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No
nice.
kidding.
Traveling too much. I don't. What have I? Now I'm full screen. No, I don't
Now
have
the pressure's on.
Ouch, like,
I'll tell you what. I'll throw one out there. And since I was going to do a plug-in one, but listening to AP, because the idea of this was we were going to do one about voiceover that we use every day. So there's one that I use every day. That's probably it's a musical thing, but I don't know how much it's used in voiceover. But a parallel bus on your voiceover. So when you're mixing something with voiceover, you get your voiceover set up nicely, so that it's. Sorry, hang on 1 second.
Okay.
My Pro
Actually,
Tools
I've
is
been,
telling
this
me
is
to
one of those
stop.
things where I have very, very little experience with, which is parallel processing.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
I've done a lot of parallel drum.
I'm very new
Yeah.
to the concept of parallel processing.
So basically, I'll go back because I thought Pro Tools had stopped. That's all.
Okay.
I'll go back to the beginning. So mine's more of a musical thing. Mine's something that musicians use a lot, and Robert was saying before, like drums is a big thing where musical mixers will use parallel compression. But the idea is that you get your for me anyway, you get your voiceover set up nicely, so it's nicely compressed and sounding good with a nice EQ. But then what you do is you send that track to, it can either be another track or a bus, whatever way you want to work. For me, it's a bus because I've usually got layers of voiceover, so I just send it to a bus. And on that bus, you heavily compress the voiceover, and you can manipulate your EQ to whatever you want to do to get it to mix in. But the idea is that once you've got it set up and you've got that heavy compression going, you then drop that signal down, but then mix it back in so that it's not there up front, but it's just making that voiceover lift. And it's giving it that enough kick to punch through the music and sound effects and everything else that's going on. But because that original signal is still fairly dynamic, you've got this other compressed one that's mixing in underneath that gives it enough punch to punch through. Does that make sense? I'm not very good at
I get it.
explaining
I
this
get it
stuff.
intellectually. It's one of those, like, it's like a tool
It's
that's always been in the toolbox, but I've been afraid to open it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
use it. I don't know why. I just I don't have
you
that
are doing
experience.
parallel gating right now, except one of your gates is
That's
set
right.
to nothing.
Yes,
That's true.
That's right.
I am mixing a mix of wet and dry. So that's essentially what I guess that's what parallel processing is, right? It's
Pretty much.
some of the processing,
there's-
some of the not.
There's those who argue that it's kind of like almost the same thing as just getting the right settings on the compressor. And
Yeah.
I've messed around with it, and it seems like you can kind of get the same stuff, but I would say that a parallel setup is way easier to dial in.
I agree.
And you can get like some pretty especially on drums, where like nothing ever falls too far away, but it feels like you're never squashing the top.
That's right.
And it is just easy to get like. I've really only used it on drums, but most compressors these days, most plugins, even like the LA2A copy of this, that, or the other thing, almost every plugin manufacturer now puts a blend knob on the end of their compressors. It's so popular. So it used to be this trick, you'd set up the same processing on 2 channels, and you have to get the same latency so that they would phase perfectly. And now it's like one knob.
Yeah.
And most
Well, so
compressors
I mean, I'm
do
used to
this.
parallel processing, quote unquote, being something we use in when we're dealing with reverb or delay,
Yeah.
because of course you need to have dry, or if it's
Dry
only
mixed with wet.
reverb, there will be insanity, right? It would be unintelligible.
It'd be Nick
So
Cave.
I'm very used. With
Did you say it'd be
I
Nick
said it'd be
Cave?
Nick Cave.
in the cave, he's super wet,
Right.
reverb.
Oh, his stuff is. Am I right, Andrew? Like,
Is it Nick Cave?
Bad Seeds. is
In
like-
what respect do you mean with Nick Cave?
Just he's got a
Their
bunch
mixes
of
are, like,
effects
super
and stuff.
reverby.
Yeah, super wet.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were making a joke because it sounds like he's in a cave.
Maybe that's
He sounds
why.
like he's in a church.
You should
Maybe
know.
that's
You
why
do
he
a
does it.
cave recording, Robert. So.
Yeah.
So overly wet would be too much. So that I understand. I understand the concept. And so when we're talking about processing, we either talk about what serial or parallel. Is that are that the 2 versions
so,
of
yeah.
ways?
Technically, yeah. It's
processing.
like insert or aux send return is the way I
Right.
think of it. But it's
But that's
literally
what's
a
interesting
serial
now, because a
parallel.
lot of insert plugins have a blend knob
Yeah.
or a dry wet. Now they're really acting more like a parallel processor. Right?
They
Yeah,
are.
I don't find that quite as effective. And Robert said that before, and I would agree with him. There's something about the blend. I think you can be more accurate with it coming
faders.
from another bus. You can, and it's easier to if you've got a couple of plugins in blend mode. It's easier if it's on a separate bus. It's actually easier to, if you need to ride it a little bit, it's easier to do that too. I
Okay.
suppose.
It's easier to control it. Maybe it's easier to automate.
It's
But
on a
is it same
fader.
with,
I mean, it's nice to have it on a 100mm fader than a knob. I'll say
Right.
that. But unless you're doing a setup where you're doing one heavy and one mild compression, but if you're doing one, like the reason why I think it's less impressive on the blend knob, because most people set the compressor to not be too heavy, and then they only blend in a little of the straight. But really, if you wanted to do more obvious parallel compression, you'd put your compressor at 10-to-1 with a low threshold and crush it by 20 decibels, and then you'd only blend in like 5% of that compressed signal, that completely crushed signal, and the majority of it would be the dry, and then
Yeah.
you'd have a natural sound with the that benefit of like it just doesn't go down too far.
Yeah.
But do
I'll tell
play
you what I'll
around
do.
with- Do you play
Sorry.
around with frequencies when you're doing this stuff though? Because
Yeah.
like when you sort of get the stereo split, and you're looking for gaps in frequencies where you can put an EQ'd voice where it will sit and pop out. Is that what you're doing with this
Especially in radio imaging, I'll play with the EQ on that squashed parallel bus. Absolutely.
Yeah.
as well? Yeah.
And the parallel bus itself will just like seem like you crush it enough, it'll seem like it loses low end, because that's where like a ton of the energy is. So when the signal comes in and your brain is going like, oh, I'm ready for that low end, and the compressor goes, nope, you're not gonna get the volume.
Yeah.
And then you hear so compressors can have an EQ like effect.
Yeah.
In their more.
I'll tell you what I
extreme
can do. AP and I just finished a relaunch package for a station in Singapore called 1FM, and we did a monster relaunch promo, sort of spruiking that the relaunch was coming, and it's got this big operatic music happening underneath it, and I've added in lots of impacts and whooshes and stuff to give it some movement and some typical FM gravitas. But what I might do is I'll put up a mix. I'll put a link in this video if you're on YouTube or in the show notes if you're listening to the audio one. I'll put it up on our website, and I'll do a mix. I'll put the full mix, and then I'll do a mix without the parallel bus of AP's voice, and you'll just see how much it's still there. You can still hear it, but the parallel bus just when something impacts and hits, it's still sitting there. It's still right there in your face.
That's the best way to explain it is to literally.
It
hear
makes
it.
a huge
I was going to ask you
difference.
if you had examples of where they're being, but that would be a cool idea.
I'll
to hear
paste that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
The parallel compression thing is much more kind of known in drums, I'd say, than using it on voice. But
I'm sort of, it's something I haven't really talked about, and I do a podcast on radio imaging with the guys from Imaging Blueprint who we've had on this show before.
Oh yeah.
But it's something we never talk about, and I was kind of interested to know: is it just me that does it on voice, or is it sort of, you know? I mean,
Voice.
I can't imagine. I don't really use it in commercial work, I suppose, unless I kind of, unless you get to that point where you think, shit, this needs a bit more kick. But it's certainly not on everything. But in it, I reckon I can't think of too many imaging projects that I've done lately that I haven't used a parallel voice bus on. So yeah,
Well, I'm
in the comments, in the comments, if
Yes.
you use it, let me know. Yeah.
I'm much more familiar with the concept of serial compression. In fact,
Yeah.
I don't even know if I still have it. I hope I do. But I had this awesome compressor called the FMR Audio RNC, which stands for
Really nice
really nice compressor.
Oh, does it really?
And, yeah.
it's like a little third of a rack space
Love it.
deal, and they're like $200, but they punch above their weight. Those are from like the early 2000s or something.
Yes.
they came out.
So I used to have one of these, and I had this in my mix bus, quote unquote, on my. I used to do production mixing on film sets.
So
And
this
what's
was on your
awesome-
stereo master? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I had it on my
I
stereo
think that's
master.
a mono.
so
That's a mono compressor. Did you have two of them?
I can do stereo.
Is
Yep,
it stereo?
it's got stereo. It's got 2 in, 2 out.
Oh shit! I didn't remember that. Wow.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Cool.
2 in, 2 out, and a sidechain.
Yeah.
So, so I would run that on my stereo bus, and then I would just press Super Nice, this button right here. And what Super Nice
like the
does,
knee.
and I
think
and
it's
I
the
think they
knee.
explain it a little bit. RNC achieves high performance at a low cost by using a microprocessor to replicate or replace discrete sidechain components. So instead of having a lot of discrete parts, right, resistors, diodes, things that make like an LA2A, amazing. With chunks of software, thereby reducing the component cost, it still processes the main audio and analog, avoiding the problems associated with digital audio conversion. Even the problem of scratchy pots are avoided. No audio flows through the pots. And basically it's using VCAs internally, right?
Yeah.
So it's this really interesting design of combining digital and analog. But what was cool about Super Nice
what
is
does the really nice button do? Does it change?
so
the
what
knee of
Super
the
Nice
compressor?
did was I did some reading about this when I first bought it, so 20 years ago. But what it did was you're sequencing a series of compressors.
Yeah.
So, and they're all at different ratios, right? So you can hit it harder and harder and harder, and it kind of hides the coloring that you get from over compressing, because
Doesn't that
it
sound like a knee?
stages.
Doesn't that sound
I
like
guess
a
it
knee?
does
where
sound like a knee. Yeah.
gets you into it gradually instead of having just like a point. It curves into the compression eventually, where it's like flat. It's kind of a big, complicated way of saying
guess you're
we'll
right.
give
It's like-
you a soft knee.
I mean, I guess talking about radio imaging again, but for me, like, I don't have on my voice, on Andrew's main voice track. If we go back to that promo that you'll hear an example of, there's not one compressor. There's a sequencer plugin, so it comes in and it goes through. The first one is a CLA 2A, which basically just takes everything that's sort of too sort of loud, brings that down.
Yeah.
Then a bit of EQ and some other processing, but then it'll go through oh God, what's it called? Another waves compressor. Anyway, it goes through that, but then that's got
Like
a bit
the
of a
Renaissance
faster.
compressor, maybe.
Yeah, sometimes I'll use the Renaissance, but the main one I
those are
use, I can
nice.
see it. It doesn't matter. I'll put it in the show notes. But it's got a faster attack and a quicker release. So then that's just dealing with anything that's still a little too hot and sort of bringing that down. And then on the master bus for the voice, where everything comes together, all the processing and the parallel bus and everything, there's a bus compressor on there as well. So you sort of, it's the same idea by the sounds of it as what you're talking about, George, is it's not just a compressor, it's a series of compressors that give you a bit more control as you're shaping that waveform, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of guys,
go ahead,
a lot of guys in music, they use like a 1070, LA2A.
1176.
1176. They'll use them both because they both do different things, and they'll stack them together.
But they're serialized. They're it's going through one, and then it's going through the next.
So I don't know if this is still going on with mastering, but at least 10 years ago, mastering engineers were starting to just clip the A to D converter just a little bit and clip this other thing just a little bit. And they were just literally purposely clipping things by half a dB here
and that's such a thing now that there are literally clippers.
Yeah, there are
plugins that are clippers.
Yeah. And also I remember the first time that I had anything mastered. So I did this recording on my cassette 8-track, mixed it down to DAT. I was interning at what was it called, the Classic Digital Mastering, which was funny because they did a lot of classical music too. But so it's like, like they did a free mastering session for this thing, and the guy loads it into Sonic Solutions, and then he's like, he finds the peak, and he's like, whatever, we're gonna bump. Like I hit it perfectly. I was like 0 on the DAT, And he's like, whatever, we're gonna raise it up by like 3 or 6. I'm like, you're gonna clip it. He's like, that's fine. It'll just be louder. That's it.
Yeah.
Just like there was no L1 back then. It was just like just
there was no
shave
maximizer
it off the top.
Yeah.
No, it was
the compressor I like on AP, the second one, by the way, is the DPR 402, the blue one with the red LED lights that sort of go vertically. And you probably don't know it. It's in the waves.
No.
That's one of their newer ones. It's not an emulation, or is it the B?
Yeah, it's an emulation. It is an emulation of hardware, because I used to have a hardware one in a studio I used to work in.
Yeah, what's the name of that company? BB. It's not BBE, but BB.
Yeah, I think it is BBE. I think
no, it's
right.
not BBE, because BBE makes the exciter that's like audio crack, and it ruins your mix.
I'm looking in my audio suite, plugins.
And still
You know what I'm
Street,
talking
but
about,
it
George?
doesn't say.
The BBE.
Yeah, DPR.
Steel
Hang on, let me pull it up.
and takes your daughter out on a date.
Here we go. Hang on.
Doesn't pay for the dinner.
Oh, I can't. Can I share my screen? No, I can't. I was going to
Oh, I think you can.
Hang on.
No?
It's coming up. My poor old Mac's got Pro Tools running and four source connections going, and God knows what else. It's desperately trying to open the plug-in.
Well, I was trying to show earlier.
Your Mac is buying fans off Amazon right now. Just to install.
Exactly.
Well, we were getting onto the tangent of knee, so I just wanted to show you. Oh, you got it?
Yeah, hang on. Let me go back. Hang on.
This could blow everything up. That.
Here we go. If the episode suddenly finishes, you'll know why.
Yeah. Andrew, just hit the end thing, and
if I go present, share screen. Here we go. Share screen. Sharing screen is easiest with 2 monitors. Yep. Share screen.
And then you have to choose the window or browser.
Okay,
tab.
and then window. Let's just go here. Share. There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's working. I just have to add
there you
it to
go.
the show. Hang on. There you go.
There you go. There it is.
Ooh.
DPR.
Yeah.
That's the name of them.
So
No, BSS.
Is that the real name?
BSS is. It's not BBE.
BSS.
It's BSS.
BSS.
There you go.
So for AP on this, I have a sort of a bit of a reasonably fast attack, and a similar release, but if you were watching this working for AP at 3 dB gain reduction light would be blinking sort of, indiscriminately on and off. It's not working very hard, but it's just cleaning up those things that are a bit higher, which means that as you work your way down the stack of compressors, you can actually compress a bit harder because there's nothing that's catching that's being compressed really hard. So you sort of you're gradually leveling it out, which means that by the time you get to a limiter, you can actually limit really hard. Because there's no peaks that are being caught and squashed radically. It's all sort of being just evenly squashed nicely. So that's the thought process behind that.
So
I was going to show Go ahead, Robert.
I was going to say, here's a setting that no one thinks about that I think can make a big difference with some of the really high-end compressors, like the George Massenburg. You see every compressor probably has an input, a threshold, attack, release, and output maybe, but you don't see hysteresis on a lot of compressors. And
Now you have to explain that now. What does that mean?
Yeah, you've
I'm
opened
gonna
that
fuck
can
it
of
up.
worms.
Yeah. I think it basically has to do with like having two thresholds.
I'll make
in a
myself
sense.
comfortable for this.
Yeah, sit back.
So like one threshold to trigger the compression, but the other threshold that it has to maybe follow below before it, compresses again. I have to remember this because I don't own one with hysteresis.
I mean,
And
I
don't
see
even
this
know,
knob
they're
on
probably-
plugins. I see certain plugins. The
Some
compressor will
plugins,
have
yeah.
a hysteresis knob. I
yeah,
think
how do you
Logic
say it? Hysteresis?
hysteresis.
I've never known. I'll go with you. Here, hold my beer, says Robert, as he dives into this subject. Yeah.
I'm Googling it right now. I'm like, I forget what it is.
So it has two thresholds of essentially a low threshold and a high threshold?
And a high
Something like
threshold,
that?
right? I think so. I think it's something like that. Because I believe you can also have it in a.
is
it
that
might
like
not be the
the,
same word, but with compressor with gates you can have it too.
What's the Waves
okay.
plugin that does that? Is it the MV1 or something that's got a high and a low threshold?
It sounds like the
There was one that
MV1.
Bob. There was one that had a whole bunch of thresholds. It was kind of like what the RNC does. That was back in the day, and it was that mastering engineer from Florida that put it out.
MV2.
An expensive piece of hardware, I'm assuming.
Here you go. Hang on. I'll share.
That was a
I'll share-
plugin. The one.
Oh, it was a
yeah.
plugin. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, hang on. Let me.
What'd you
let me
find,
try
Dave?
this. Tell me if this is the one you're thinking of. Is that with a high or low threshold?
Well, that definitely has a high and a low level.
Seems, and that's it's at a low level, it's sucking it up, and at
Is
a
this
high
an
level, it's
expander
squashing
and a
it down.
compressor?
It sort of seems to be both in the one, but that's why I'm wondering whether that's what Robert's talking about. Is that what you're thinking of?
If I can find here, I'll show you a picture of the definite compressor I'm thinking of, because GML. Let's see, I gotta spell it out.
This has become like a really deep dive on compressors, actually.
It has, hasn't it?
It is what it has. Yeah.
And it's
kinda
made,
nice.
I'm looking across
So
here, looking at
here's-
my 2254 and thinking
It doesn't have a hysteresis.
it's got a lot of stuff in it. No, it doesn't, but it's got lots of different, a couple of different limiter recovery, fast attack.
Is that a Neve thing?
Yeah,
Release
compress-
hysteresis. It has to do with the release timing. So here's if I was to, I will find it. Let's see here. I'm zoomed in too much. Okay, so how do I share my screen now?
And bottom.
Present.
Present arms.
Share
Yeah.
screen.
If Robert disappears, we know why.
Share screen. And I guess we'll just do this. No, I'll do that. That'll be easiest. This one.
Here we go. And
So,
then I add it to the
here's your-
stage, and here it is.
Here
Do
we
you see that?
Yep.
Yep.
And if I zoom in on this thing, so let's see here, view, zoom in. How far can we zoom in?
There's such a thing as called
Okay.
shortcut. Do you know that, don't you?
There you go. I just did it. I didn't think of what it was. So there you go. Timing release hysteresis. And you notice it has a setting here
okay.
and a setting there. And it has to do, so maybe in here, let's see. We're
So
gonna
George
find-
Massenburg is probably one of the most renowned hardware designers.
And what is that, like a
of the-
$4,000 compressor probably?
Yeah, I mean everything
Yeah.
he made is absolute. Their
I
money
mean,
is
check
no
this shit out.
object.
Crest factor.
Crest factor.
Yeah, timing and
Wow.
release
Timing and
hysteresis to
release.
precisely control dynamic features of musical performance when would arbitrarily familiar features such as they don't tell us what it is. They just say it's cool stuff. So
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't
I've
really
never-
want you to know.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Does want
You know
to give
what I
the game away. Go and spend
doesn't wanna give
$4,000
away
and
the
buy
crust
one, Robert,
factor.
and then come back to us.
Exactly.
I'll expense it. Yeah, I'll expense
Yeah.
it. No problem.
GML.
Source Elements won't mind.
George
You just
Massenburg.
won a couple of awards. You'll be right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, when you were talking about knee, I just wanted to show you this compressor that I probably don't understand how to use, but I've been using for 15 years. And it's the Dynamics plugin called Dynamics processor. So this is the plugin that comes on
It's the Apple plugin.
It's the Apple Dynamics plugin. And the thing about this plugin is it doesn't have a ratio. It has a ceiling control. And I still
more like
don't
a limiter.
understand.
So it's
Yeah, I
like a
don't-
limiter? Yeah, that's a limiter thing.
Kind of. Yeah, it's very strange. But the bottom line is when I
A
use
ceiling
it,
and a threshold can be similar, but if you think of it, if you have infinity to 1 ratio and a threshold, then your threshold is your ceiling.
oh, okay. Okay.
No, you've confused me, but I'll believe you.
If the ratio is infinity to 1, meaning you shall not pass past my threshold,
Yeah, it's brick wall. Yeah.
then your threshold is the ceiling.
Right. So this funny
True.
little plugin,
Yeah.
right, which I've been using for many, many years. It's got attack release and a master output, normal stuff. It's got an expander with a threshold, totally normal. You know, I use this. It's very handy. You can do a nice gentle expander. Very, very useful, right? Then you've got the threshold for the compressor, and it has a headroom setting, not a ratio. And then you'll notice it's absolutely a knee. What do you call it? Knee style, right?
Yeah, that's a knee. Gentle
And as you
or hard,
approach, brick wall, right?
well, that's brick wall. Yeah,
That's brick wall right there, right? So it's very weird. I never really understand how to conceptualize the headroom
I
number.
love this style of compressor.
But
this
it
is
works
the way
really well.
MDT was. Yeah,
It works
this is a
great.
great way to do compressors, and this is
very
the same way
transparent.
MDT.
Yeah.
I think
like
MDT was multi-band dynamics, and you got one of those curves for every single frequency band.
Yeah. Well, they have a multi-band version of this too, where it gets really
Yeah,
interesting.
there you go.
But considering that's a freebie, it just comes on Apple. I mean, it's
Yep.
pretty damn good. So
What you
It's just
made
'cause
there,
it's
by
free,
the way,
I've
is
been
known as
using
a that thing you made there with the gate and the compressor. It's known as a compander, and you'll see that on some like the Yamaha O2, I think, had a compander. It was basically your gate and expander together.
yeah,
I think
so-
companders have almost become extinct from.
You don't see them much anymore. I don't know why.
That's because not enough
Yeah.
of them come anymore.
And- and Yamaha wants them all back from all the zoos.
It's that bamboo diet that they have trouble with. Yeah.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite, with thanks to TriBooth and Austrian Audio. Recorded using Source Connect. Edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging. With tech support from George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, theproaudiosuite.com.
And on that note, I think we should fuck off.
Oh man, that is definitely the end of that episode. I love how our episodes really do not have an end.
They just go boom.
They really don't.
It's like
It's
you're
just
walking along,
like-
you don't see the glass door that's actually shut in front of you.
Well, actually,
straight
there's a
into it.
podcast I like, and they end the way they end it is one of them tricks the other ones into saying goodbye or bye, and so he'll say some sentence and then slip in the word bye, so it fits into the sentence. So he'll be like, "So I realized it was very hard to come by," and then they would all say bye, and that's how they'd end the episodes because like nobody knows how to fucking end the damn episode, so you just ramble on and like, how do we end this fucking thing?